Representative Mike Conaway is a Republican from Texas. He's chairman of the House Subcommittee on General Farm Commodities and Risk Management, which oversees the commodities exchanges. Congressman, thank you for being with us today. What do you say? Do you think the markets are rigged, specifically the equity markets?
Well, thanks, Tyler. I appreciate being on your program. It doesn't really matter whether I think they're rigged or not. The evidence ought to drive what we decide to do. So what I'm for is a rational, thoughtful process to examining the issue and understanding the phenomenon and seeing what it does and doesn't do. One thing we ought to try to avoid often, all the time here in D.C. is the ready, fire, aim scenario that sometimes gets ginned up with a media frenzy. So it's all about getting the facts. This is a relatively complicated area, pretty niche piece of it, although large in dollar terms, not that many players involved. And so I'm being told there are folks on the other side of the issue who say these narrowing of the spreads that the high-frequency traders would argue is a result of their activity. These narrowing spreads has helped these folks who are professional investors with their yields and their operations. So let's get the facts. We clearly have one side of the story that's being promoted the most, but there are ought to have both sides of the story as we look at any necessary regulations, regulations if necessary.
I take your point, Congressman Conaway. We in the media, we love media frenzy, by the way. We live on media frenzy. But so let me go back to one of the fundamental questions here, and that is whether the presence of high-frequency traders who have access to what's known as order flow can see what you want to do before you do it, whether that creates a fundamental unfairness in the markets, whether you'd go so far as to call them rigged or not. How do you come down on that, to the extent that you understand it? Because you're right, it is complicated stuff.
It is. Well, front-running, as we typically understand that phraseology, is already against the law, against the rules. But we need to understand exactly what they're doing. Something that you can do manually that is legal, that you can also do at lightning speed, doesn't automatically make that illegal. So understanding what these phenomena do and don't do with this high-frequency trading is incumbent on everybody who's trying to weigh on this decision. That exchange you had yesterday among the combatants, I don't know is helpful in trying to get the actual facts out on the table as to what we need to do or not do. So examining what's happening, understanding it, seeing exactly how that business model works. I also, quite frankly, have great confidence in the market self-correcting itself in this regard. So anytime you have one person taking advantage, the market corrects itself and moves in there. You've got self-regulatory agencies are involved. So getting the facts as to what high-frequency trading really does and doesn't do is important to how that might or might not be re-regulated.
Your fellow House member, Peter DeFazio, was just on a few moments ago, and he urged as one way to correct the problem of the incentive to high-frequency trade is to put a transaction tax. Let me guess, you would be against that.
Well, yes, I could categorically against that. This is an idea that from time to time, Chaka Fattah from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, also has a transaction tax. No, this should not be used as an excuse, whatever regulatory scheme might be there, to raise taxes. It was interesting that he would take that position because Michael Allen, or the author of this book, argues that the transaction costs are higher. This would simply make transaction costs higher, and the individual investor would be hurt. Mom and pop, the investor who's investing for the long term, their costs would go up, which would require a higher return on the investment to make it even. So transaction cost of whatever amount should not be a part of this conversation.
Okay, thank you very much, Congressman Conaway. Appreciate your being with us. Congressman Conaway, Republican from Texas. Sue.